Welcome back to CIA Declassified. We've climbed the freezing peaks of Xinjiang. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. In Operation Taxman earlier today, but next we're descending into the sweltering heat of the Guatemalan jungle. In 1954, the Cold War found a new front in the banana plantations of Central America. To protect corporate interest and counter perceived Soviet influence, the agency didn't just plan a coup. They drafted a literal handbook on murder. This was Project PB Success. To topple a democratically elected leader, the agency first had to master the art of the invisible strike. Project PB Success was the covert operation that deposed Guatemalan President Jacobo Arbenz Guzman, replacing him with the military dictatorship of Carlos Castillo Armez. A quote from the A Study of Assassination manual. Assassination is a term of wide definition. For the purpose of this paper, it is defined as the planned killing of a person who is not under the legal jurisdiction of the killer, whose death is expected to have a significant effect upon the course of events. End quote. The agency utilized an intense psychological warfare program codenamed Operation Sherwood, which involved broadcasting fake news of a massive rebel invasion from a secret radio station to demoralize the Guatemalan army. A quote from a 1954 CIA instructional memo. The most efficient accident in assassination is a fall of 75 feet or more onto a hard surface. Elevator shafts, stairwells, unscreened windows, and bridges are the best. End quote. The declassified records show that the agency provided a list of 58 Category 1 individuals to be neutralized, a euphemism for executed, in the event of a successful takeover. A quote from President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Thanks to the CIA, we have added a new and glorious chapter to the already great tradition of the American states. End quote. The archives reveal that the agency spent over $2.7 million on the operation, much of it funneled through Langley front companies to hide the trail of U.S. funding. Agency pilots flew P-47 Thunderbolt fighters disguised with rebel markings to bomb fuel tanks and government buildings in Guatemala City. A quote from an internal CIA postmortem report. The operation relied on psychological impact rather than the actual military strength. It was the impression of power that caused Arbenz to resign. End quote. The Langley propaganda campaign included mailing thousands of prayer cards to Guatemalan citizens claiming that the Arbenz government was planning to outlaw religion. The Declassified A Study of Assassination manual was discovered by accident in the 1990s among a batch of unrelated training files from the 1950s. The agency utilized Langley infiltration teams to place bugging devices in the homes of high-ranking Guatemalan officers to record their private doubts about the president. A quote from the Assassination Manual on Weapons. The hammer is a viable tool provided the blow is struck to the temple. It is quiet, readily available, and easily discarded. End quote. The logs confirm that the agency secretly trained the rebel forces in Opalaca, Florida, before smuggling them into Honduras for the final assault. In the aftermath of the coup, the CIA launched Operation PB History to examine 500,000 documents from the Arbenz regime in a failed attempt to prove he was a Soviet puppet. A quote from the Assassination Manual on Morality. Murder is not morally justifiable. Killing a political leader whose burgeoning career is a clear and present danger to the cause of freedom may be held necessary. End quote. The agency created a tactical unit codenamed Link based in Florida, which acted as the nerve center for all paramilitary communications during the 9-day invasion. A quote from a declassified 1953 progress report: "The psychological effect of our P-47 sorties has been out of all proportion to the actual damage inflicted." End quote. During the operation, the CIA used a technique called voice of liberation to jam government radio frequencies and replace them with looped recordings of rebel victories that had not yet happened. The declassified ledger shows that the agency paid $150,000 to Nicaraguan President Somoza to use his airfields as a staging ground for bombing runs. Well, the assassination manual is public. The most significant redactions in this release appear in Document 3, Selection of Individuals for Disposal. Why do these black bars still exist 70 years later? Get ready for the theory of the puppet master. Speculation suggests the manual wasn't just for Guatemala, but a global blueprint for every major regime change of the century. The rumor is that the redactions in the post-operational liquidation logs hide the target list for the next 50 years, including sitting heads of state who were marked for removal long before they even took office. What if PB's success used occult rituals? A dark rumor suggests the agency used the assassination manual to trigger ancient curses in the Mayan ruins to terrify the local population. The theory claims the redactions in the indigenous belief exploitation files hide bloodline erasure reports, evidence of a plan to systematically eliminate certain families to fulfill a dark prophecy. Looking at the disbursement of black funds, the redactions are massive. Some theorists believe these hide Project Fruit Loop, a plan to pay off the United Fruit Company with gold recovered from Nazi bunkers, with the black ink masking the serial numbers of the bars. The voice from the void theory posits that the redactions in Radio Sherwood transcripts hide frequencies used to broadcast hypnotic commands. Speculators argue the black bars protect suboral trigger words that could force listeners to commit acts of violence against their own neighbors. The final disposal of assets section is heavily redacted. Gossip suggests this masked Project Clean Sweep, where the agency eliminated its own rebel mercenaries after the coup to ensure no one could ever testify about the U.S. involvement. The Langley Ghost Squad theory claims the redactions in the personnel casualties report hide the existence of a unit of undead soldiers, men who were legally dead but kept operational through experimental stimulants, with the black bars masking their biological status. In the psychological profile of Arbenz files, entire chapters are missing. Some believe this hides evidence that the president was actually an agency plant who went rogue, and the redactions cover the embarrassing details of his initial recruitment. The post-coup agricultural remapping report is almost entirely blacked out. Rumors suggest this hides the discovery of an eternal seed in the Guatemalan soil, a crop that could end world hunger, which the agency suppressed to maintain corporate control over the global food supply. Gossip suggests the redactions in the interagency communications section hide a fallout between the CIA and the FBI over who got to keep the assassination manual, with the black ink masking the heated insults traded between J. Edgar Hoover and Allen Dulles. Lastly, some whisper that the redactions hide the fact that the manual was actually written by an AI prototype from the future, and the black bars mask the system kernel signatures found on the original pages. Was Project PB's success a success? Tactically, it was a ruthless success. The agency managed to overthrow a government with minimal U.S. casualties and successfully installed a pro-American regime. Strategically, it was a catastrophe. It set a precedent for intervention that destabilized Central America for decades, leading to a 36-year civil war and the deaths of over 200,000 people. It turned the good neighbor policy into a memory and fueled anti-American sentiment across the entire hemisphere. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs go, the Executioner's Guide changed the face of covert operations. For instance, modern psychological warfare, the integration of Radio Sherwood proved that controlling the narrative is more important than controlling the territory. The assassination protocol, the formalization of executive action techniques that would be refined during the Cold War. Deniable paramilitary logistics, the creation of the Langley airlift model for supplying rebel forces through shell companies, and propaganda saturation, the first major use of Langley disinformation to flip the public opinion of an entire nation in under a year. Project PB's success reminds us that the agency doesn't just collect information. They rewrite history with a typewriter and a trigger, as the files reveal. A Study of Assassination manual was only the beginning of the story. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us next time as we examine Project Walnut. In 1959, the clandestine services and IBM built the World Data Bank. We'll uncover the binary dossier and the quest for total information compatibility. We'll look at the microfilm mountains, the secret algorithms, and the moment the agency realized that the best way to secure the future was to trap every secret inside a silicon vault. Join us next time for the Silicon Eye. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.